Welcome back to All the Cars I've Loved Before as we barrel into season 2. Next stop, season 3. And the mileposts along the way, be part of it. CarsLove.com. Check us out. I am at Christian at CarsLove.com. The guy who's the puppet master pulling the string behind the scenes. Hey, what's this thing hanging out of my back? Is Doug. Doug at CarsLove.com. Morning, Doug. How you doing, pal?
Doing great. Good to be back with you.
Amen. Good to see you. Good to see our guest, Jim. How you doing this morning, Jim?
Good. How you doing?
Excellent. Before we get into formal introduction, we'll just tell you where we stand. Again, the tent continues to broaden around this planet. And I think we have a few people listening in from Venus and Mars. I don't think we've gone as far as Jupiter and Saturn. But you know what? Hey, with Starlink, Elon Musk Starlink satellite lighting up the universe, who knows? I think anything is possible with low Earth orbit. So you'll want to check us out at carslove.com for pictures of guests, everything they've done, as well as ensure, please, that you're following the show on your podcast streaming platform of choice, as they say, and download the episodes, because you're going to be somewhere without signal, but you desperately want to hear the latest episode. Join the thousands and millions of people who've never heard of us. And if you have it downloaded, you don't need signal, and you can just go into a cave, and as long as you have enough battery, you'll be able to check us out. So that's sort of where we stand. And I'm going to bring in my partner to let us know. We always have some big time things going on. What's the latest, Doug, in our marketing and outreach strategies?
Well, before I go into that, just if for those who are listening and downloading, as Christian said, what better place to listen to a podcast about people in their cars than in your car? So if it's a holiday, if you're commuting to work, great time. Our episodes are 30-ish minutes, good for the average commute. If you're like me and you don't commute, and
such a good point.
Go on lots of walks, another great time. But
yeah, I like to visit caves very often, and like Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. And I like to go into the bowels of a cave and get all the lights turned off and then listen to this podcast. And if you download it, and you have it locally on your machine, it's very helpful, I find. Sorry, keep going, Doug.
No, that is good. So, depending on when you're hearing this episode, we are over 500 downloads. Thank you to everyone. 500 downloads of the podcast from your preferred platforms, many more on the website.
Yeah. Thank you.
Many countries, cities across the world, really getting somewhere. So we're super happy, really happy about season 2. We all survived, and there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Join the conversation. Email us if you want to be there. There's a form on the website. You can shoot up a flare gun, and we'll either Doug or myself will probably see it. We'll track you down. Make sure you're safe, number one, but then talk about how to get you on the show. Now, also, yeah. Oh, back to you, Doug. You had something else to say.
No. I would say, hey, if you're at your local Cars and Coffee, feel free to mention our show to anybody. But if you see somebody and they just have a cool car, or they're just so animated and excited about it, tell them about the show. We'd love to have them on, which brings us back full circle to our awesome guest.
You got it.
Yeah. So Jim, Jim, may we use your last name?
Sure can, yeah.
Yep. Hopefully I'll pronounce it right. Jim Gravina.
Correct. That's correct.
Originally from upstate New York, Syracuse. Now living in Northern Virginia, but Christian, I know you have a very good way of getting to the meat of things. So let's find out more about Jim.
Yeah, for sure, Jim. So let's start with you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's step back in time, as it were, into our time machine and meet young Jim and his motivations, his family, But let's start with you in the here and now. Anything you'd like to share? You may stay as anonymous as you'd like. This is important for any future guests. We have a lot of people, or we have had guests come on that want to give us very little and want to remain anonymous, and then there are people that want to, put their credit reports on our website. So wherever you fall, Jim, take it away, pal. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. So I'm about to have 41st birthday here in another 2 weeks, so that's coming up.
Happy birthday.
But
Go ahead.
backing up, to my younger years, I'm from Syracuse, New York, born and raised. Started getting into, when I was in school, I got really into the computer design and computer editing as early as I think middle school, and that caused me to continue that into college. And I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, where I took classes in visual effects and motion graphics. And the dream was to work for the movies, and work on like Transformers movies or Star Wars type movies and stuff like that. But that didn't really exactly happen. And after college, I had moved back home, and I had worked at a local TV news station. So I was still in the same world of design and editing. I got hired as a promotions, it was called a promotions art director, where I was basically in charge of making the graphics for the TV stations, the animations, and all that for the local news stations. It was a CBS affiliate in Syracuse. And I worked there for about 8 months. And what had happened was, this is my first job out of college. What happened was the TV station was about to go into what we called a shared service agreement with another local station, which unfortunately meant about 80% of the people at that TV station were going to lose their jobs to the people at the other station when they did the merge. So I was still young. I was only like 22, 23 years old. Didn't affect me whatsoever. Longer story short, my boss, who basically ended up laying me off, told me about a job at a sister TV station, which was an NBC affiliate in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So he kind of pulled some strings and got me a job in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So moved over there. I was there for about 2.5 years, which is where I met my now wife. And then we caught wind of something very similar happening. And I did the same type of work, just at a different TV station. Something similar was coming down the lines where some people might be losing their jobs and stuff. So I caught wind of that awful quick, and I went and did a similar move to Fresno, California, another TV station. Now, all these TV stations were under the same umbrella. They were all owned by the same company, just in different markets. So I moved over there. My wife ended up coming with me.
Sinclair, something like that?
Yeah. She wasn't, she didn't, we weren't married at the time, we were still dating,
Gotcha.
but she moved with me to California, and there for about another 3 years or so. And then again, I wanted something more. So we left there, and we went to Miami, Florida, where
Miami.
then we did
My goodness.
Then we did Miami, and we were there for about 3.5 years. And again, this was the first time that I stepped away from the local TV stations under the same company and worked for what we called an O&O, which was an owned and operated NBC station in Miami. So it was still the same kind of work. It was a little bit more. It was definitely it was a pay raise. It was a better TV station. It was a better experience.
Sure, you're moving up. You got to do whatever it takes to move.
Yeah, I was moving up the ladder, but this time it was a little bit more of a serious thing. And so I was there for longer, as 3.5 years. And then we left there because I just didn't want to do news graphics anymore. And we moved out of there I took a new job that landed me here in Alexandria, Virginia. And I am now a senior motion designer at a post-production shop in Washington, D.C. So that's what I do now.
So interesting. Very, very great. Now, so I find it very interesting. These are 3 long haul stretches, kind of from Syracuse to a stop in between, I understand, Fort Wayne, Indiana, to Fresno, and then down to Miami. May I ask how a Syracuse guy, where I think it snows more than just about anywhere, fared in Miami? Because it is hot down there. I live in the panhandle of Florida, and that heat down there is another level of what I experience here, which is orders of magnitude worse than what people experience in Syracuse. So just a minute or two, if you can, on living those two places for
so
years.
it was I that was actually part of the reason why we left, was because of the heat and the humidity. And my wife's the
Brutal.
same way. She prefers
Yeah.
seasons. She's, we lived in Indiana for a long time, so she was used to the seasons. And
Yeah.
again, the whole reason why I went there was because of work. So you have to do what you have to do. But after 3.5, 4 years of the same kind of weather, it just got to be enough. I mean, there was more factors than just the weather, but there was stuff at work going on that I wanted to kind of just move on. But yeah, we did not care for the weather. It just got too hot, too humid, too much at the time. And so we just said,
Gotcha.
you know what, this isn't for us. Landed in Virginia, and we think it's perfect.
Back to the seasons.
We get the change of seasons, but we also don't get the snow that I used to get in Syracuse. So that's a nice little trade-off. You get the winter, but you don't get all that snow that I used to get. So it's been very lovely. And my folks are still home. They're still in Syracuse. So I still go up for holidays and stuff. So they're still there.
Love that. Love that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And now, if we could, let's step into the Wayback Machine, as it were.
Way
back.
Let's
way back.
Oh, you guys want to go way back? We go way back.
I mean, not to the diaper stage, a little past. And let's see let's talk about aspirations as a young man. And when was the first time you slid behind a steering wheel? And feel free to include any family history if that's appropriate as well.
Yeah, of course. So it's me and my parents, Paul and Lynn. I also have two twin sisters. They're twins of each other, not of me. They're 4 years younger, Jillian and Lisa. And yeah, growing up, we lived in, like I said, in a little suburb of Syracuse, New York. And my first experience driving was, our family owned a lake house on Cross Lake. It was something that we had ever since I was born. It was something my grandparents had built in the 70s. And growing up, as little as I can remember, it was only about a 25-minute drive from our house, this lake house. And it was, my dream place. I loved it there. I'd go fishing. It was just the place to be. There would be days, even after school, we would go up there for a couple hours because it was so close. But I mention this because there's a dirt road, what we call the fire road. It's just a dirt road that takes you down to where our lake house is. And it's about a 1.5 mile road or so. And that road is where my first experience driving was. I was probably 12 years old, sitting on my grandfather's lap in his pickup truck.
Oh, I love that.
And he would let me steer the wheel as we would go down. And then, I did that for several years or whatever it was. And then it got to the point, even under the age of 16, he would let me actually drive. He would, because it was a private road. It was not a public road. It was very private. So people do that kind of stuff all the time, let the kids drive and stuff. So yeah, he would let me drive his pickup truck up and down that dirt road at our lake house.
Nice.
Yeah. And so it was my first experience driving. And then one thing I want to mention is my father has a 1980 Z28 Camaro. And he had bought that brand new on leap year day, actually. In 1980. And he bought that. He still has his original owner, but he bought that in 1980. He bought it before he married my mother and before he had me and my sisters. And it's a funny story that I'm going to get to in a second. But after he had, started having children, the car kind of had to end up becoming a daily driver because money was tight. They couldn't really afford another car to keep the Camaro garage. So he had to start driving it. And in the Syracuse winter months, with all the salt on the road, it just started to deteriorate. And it got so bad that he just parked it in the corner of the garage and it just sat there for 15, 20 years or something like that. But then, life goes on and, we got older, we moved out of the house, and it got to a point where my dad started to want to restore the car. So he ended up doing a full restoration on it about 10 years ago. But that kind of inkling of restoring the car and seeing his passion for that led me to kind of pursue my passion, which, when I was a kid growing up, one of my, I don't know if we want to get into this just yet, but one of my favorite movies is Back to the Future. I've always wanted a DeLorean.
We get that a lot. Yep.
I've heard that.
Yeah. But unfortunately, my first car was not a DeLorean. My first car was a 1998 Chevy Cavalier. That was my very first car.
Close. They're very similar, I find. Yes.
Yes. It's the stainless steel finish on both of those cars is what does it.
Tell us about that first car. Actually, if you don't mind rewinding. So your dad did the your dad did the restoration. Did he do any of the work himself, or he farmed it out?
So a little bit of both. And I say that because my sister's now husband, his father is a car mechanic, and that's what he does. So my dad is not a mechanic. I mean, he knows his way around a toolbox, but he was not a mechanic. So, he was lucky. And it was my sister's husband's father. His name's Todd. It was because of him that he even decided to take the leap to get it restored, because my dad knew he had the help that he would need. So yeah, he did what he could. He turned some wrenches and turned some screwdrivers, but he wasn't in there boring out cylinder heads or anything like that. But no, he did what he could, but he kind of left the rest of it up to the professionals,
And your dad plans to keep this car till
Yep,
he can drive anymore.
Yep, he restored it. It was his baby. It was the only thing that he can say he still owns prior to being married and having children. And it's funny because my mother's name is Lynn, and his license plate is B4 Lynn.
Nice.
So that's the license plate on his car, because it's the one thing. My mom loves it. She gets a kick out of it every time. But it really is the one thing he can say is his own prior to being married and having kids.
Nice,
Love
nice.
that.
And have you ever driven this car, Jim?
I've never driven it. Nope. I mean, growing up, I was just too young. And then since it's been restored, I honestly just really haven't had the time. And I don't know. I'm a little nervous. Might come to a shock to some people, but I've actually never driven a manual car. And I'm just kind of nervous to do so on his. So
it's a manual. Okay.
Yeah, that's a manual. Cool. And
but it's his baby. He takes it out on weekends.
Yeah, he does cars and coffee. It's not a daily driver anymore, thankfully, finally. And he just keeps it nice and just takes it to car shows and cars and coffees. Yep.
Nice. So yeah. Of course there's a good parallel that we'll talk about in the Back to the Future, and your dad had his dream car before LYNN, and you had your car, but your first car being this 1998 Chevy Cavalier, high school.
Yeah, it was actually just after high school. I never had it in high school.
Okay.
But after I graduated high school, my dad said, look, and even growing up through high school, he says, look, whatever you save for a car, I'll match it. Okay.
Nice.
So I kind of put money away. I would do some odd jobs. I'd mow lawns, shovel driveways, keep all the money from the grandparents at holidays, so I would keep all that. And I ended up having, and numbers, I don't know if I remember exactly the number, but I think I had like $3,500 saved up to get a car. And my dad says, okay, well, here's another 3,500 as I promised. So you have 7,000 to go buy a car. And I think that was the number. I don't remember. So this would have been in 2001, because that's when I graduated. So I think it was that summer is when I got the car. And we went down to the local dealers around town, started looking around, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this blue Cavalier. I didn't realize it was a Cavalier at the time. I just saw this blue car that I liked. So I took it for a test drive, and we actually ended up buying it on the spot. And it was a great car.
Can I hop in here one second? What is that? I think that's I don't know if work ethic is lost on the younger generation, but I got to hit pause and rewind for just a second here, because I say to my kids, I say the same thing. Children, if you save a certain amount of money, father will match it. And, my kids say, no, thanks, Dad. I think we'll just walk. It's this matching principle that I think is so key. And I don't think when they go out in the real world and see that the old man is willing to match absolutely zero of what you want to spend on. So, hey, I'm going to say kudos to your pops, which sounds like a great guy, but to you too for meeting that challenge. Anyway, I had to squeeze that in there. Please continue. Sorry.
Any redeeming quality about the car? You got to pick it. Right. It wasn't a hand-me-down or anything.
No, I got to choose it. I mean, as long as it fit in my budget, my dad said I could have whatever I wanted, and I don't know, something just drew me to it. I don't know. I honestly just think it was the color, and it was a two-door coupe.
It was a coupe.
I always thought they were sharp-looking cars.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I thought they were sharp-looking, and I know that blue you're talking about. It's that GM electric blue. I know that car exactly. It's eye-catching for sure.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the song Electric Blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be.
Maybe.
So I had that car for several years. It went to college with me, though it didn't go to my first year of college because students were not allowed to have cars on campus their first year. But my second year of college, it was on campus with me, and then I even had it a few years after that, until it just got to the point where it just started just breaking down. It just wasn't worth the upkeep anymore.
Rusting out. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha. But yeah, so blue Cavalier, great car. Yeah. And so what happened to that car?
So
it's
I ended
not
up
in your dad's garage anymore, right?
Yeah, no, wasn't parked in the garage. I ended up selling. A fun story about that car, though, which is one thing I really liked, is, what a lot of people don't know is, or a lot of people do know that know me, of course, is I actually do sleight-of-hand magic. I'm a magician, and for a long time, I actually had the word Magic Man plastered as a big decal on the back of that car. So that was one thing that was a real takeaway for me with that car, because anytime I'd be driving around, my friends would, stop me because they would know it was me driving, because it said Magic Man on the back. And to this day, from what I heard, we sold it to somebody local in Syracuse. And I think just as early as maybe 2 years ago, my dad says he still sees the car driving around because the guy never took the Magic Man off the back of it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's true or not, if he's just saying that, but there's a good chance, because it was in good shape. It wasn't completely like out of its misery, but it was just for time for me to move on to something else,
Something more responsible and reliable. And maybe it's still on the road because of that magic that you did. Maybe you put a spell on it.
That's a very good point.
It's very around forever.
It very well could be.
Let's not be too cavalier about the point of magic. So how serious were you into the magic scene? Was this just sort of a passing?
No, at the time I was very serious. I mean,
wow.
I started doing magic in high school, and I would learn from books and stuff about basic sleight of hand, and I was not a stage magician. I don't do the stage illusions or any of that. I was just, you give me a deck of cards and some coins, and I can do a lot of sleight of hand for you. And a lot of people that know me now don't realize that I was actually pretty shy in high school. And learning magic was a great icebreaker to really open up to people and meet new people.
Huge confidence booster.
Yeah. Exactly, a big confidence booster. And when I realized that this magic thing was actually working, not only by just being able to fool people, but to legit, be a confidence booster.
Yeah.
And that was a big help. Let me just pause something real quick.
Now is this? No, please continue.
No, and then I was just going to say, so it was, after high school and into college when it really started to take off. I would do local bar and restaurant magic. I would do corporate events and things like that. So yeah, it really started taking off when I was in my college years.
So what is your favorite trick?
So my favorite trick is it's actually a trick called Could Be. And it's basically an effect where it's a regular deck of cards, and it's an effect where I keep showing, somebody selects a card, and I narrow it down to what could be 4 cards that is their card. And those 4 cards actually all become their card. So it's all of the same card. But then, I can't tell you how, but then they all change to 4 aces at the end.
I am not at your level, but I know that trick. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is cool. So sleight of hand, mostly cards. Are there other things that you do? You mentioned you're not an illusionist or big stage magic.
Yeah, I don't even call myself an illusionist. Yeah, but it's 80% of what I do is all card stuff. I don't use trick decks or trick cards. I focus on the pure sleight of hand. But coins, rubber bands, just anything kind of around the house, around the office. But yeah, I really don't do much outside of that, because I want to always be on the ready. So if someone says, hey, can you do a trick, being funny, I can actually do something, so whether it's with silverware or a napkin, I mean, there's always something I can do.
Fantastic. Yeah. There's always a deck of cards sitting at the ready. Yep. There's always a salt shaker. Exactly. There's always a napkin. Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful. Yep. Hey, thank you. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it's been a big part of my life. I don't perform as much as I used to. I mean, I used to do corporate shows and restaurants and bars, but over the years, and now that I'm settling down to my regular career, I just don't have the time as much as I used to.
Yeah, the only magic now is trying to get a good night's sleep. Figure that one out. Please
Exactly.
let me know.
I'll let you know.
Well, what do you say, Doug? Should we move on to the next
Yeah.
car in his
Yeah.
luxury fleet?
Yeah. So we know the Chevy Cavalier, it may still be living to this day, but
Cavalier if you're French, but go ahead.
yeah. But Jim got another car. Tell us about this other car.
So after I got rid of the Cavalier, I needed a car, of course, because this would have been, I'm trying to remember, it was between, geez, some of the details are fuzzy because I've moved around so much and the years get confused, but I believe it was when I was making my move to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I had gotten rid of the Cavalier and actually acquired a Hyundai Sonata. It was a 2005 Hyundai Sonata. And that was not a choice car. It was actually a hand-me-down.
Love how you put it.
Yeah, not a choice car.
Family heirloom, we could call it.
It was a great car, but just not something I would have picked. But it was my grandfather's who had it. My parents bought it for him brand new. And he would only drive it to the store and to get gas and stuff. He did not really drive it much. But my grandfather, over the years, he started becoming disabled and he couldn't drive anymore. So my parents says, well, we paid for this car. We might as well see if Jim wants it. So long story short, I don't think they asked me for anything for it. They gave it to me. And so I had that car, and I believe I don't remember if I drove it or traveled it to Indiana, but Indiana was when my first really that kind of came into my possession, and I started using that as my daily driver.
Gotcha.
And how long did you keep the car for? Obviously, it's a family car, maybe not your favorite, but it was.
Yeah, so I had that all through Indiana. It also came to Fresno, California with me.
Oh, wow.
And it also made the move to Miami, Florida with me. Wow. So I had it in all three of those states.
So how many years would you say you had that?
So that would have been, let's see,
you had to guess.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 6 or 7 years. I had that. Yep. And then honestly, there's really no wow stories on that car. It was just a daily driver for me. It got reliable. To and home from work and stuff. So, but yeah, there was I didn't put Magic Man on the back of that one or anything,
Not magic worthy.
No. So, but it's still a great car, and it really did help me through those years. But the only reason why I got rid of it is because I had a little mishap in the parking lot of the TV station that I worked at.
Uh-oh.
Now, when these TV station people, when they have a breaking story, they bolt like a bat out of hell to get out of there and go to that story. So I'm parked in the parking lot, and I'm backing out, and I'm a good driver. I look both ways. So as I'm backing out of nowhere, I just get hit in the back and the back passenger rear quarter panel. And I'm thinking, where the hell did this guy come from? Because I did not see him. So it hit, I got hit. It made the trunk pop open. Luckily, the vehicle was still drivable, but it was just not something I wanted to worry about getting fixed or anything like that.
Right.
So I ended up selling that car to CarMax. I think some of these details are fuzzy, but I believe I sold it to CarMax. And then while still in Florida, I think just a few weeks later, I ended up buying my current daily driver, which is a red 2014 Mazda 6 that is just about to hit 100,000 miles.
Nice.
I was going to ask. Yeah, you put some miles on that puppy.
Yeah.
And any redeeming quality? Obviously, I'm sure the family was sad to hear about the Hyundai, but any redeeming quality about the Mazda 6 and or the color and why you made that choice?
So the Mazda 6 I have, it was the first year of the current generation. So it was the first year of the current Gen 3 that they still have that generation out. And it was the first year, and I just loved the design because it was so different from their previous generation. And I got what they call soul red color. I've always wanted a red car. It's just a very, very beautiful red color. It's one of those colors that looks different in the night than when the sun's on it. It just sparkles. It's just a really sharp color. And it was also the first brand new car I had ever bought. I had never bought a brand new car. So I bought it brand new believe it or not, it was a 2014 model. I bought it brand new in February 2013. So they were out almost a whole year earlier than when they would usually come out. And I did all sorts of research on how to wheel and deal with a car dealer. And that stuff kind of gets me excited. I like trying to figure out these car guys and stuff and try to get the best deal. So I was after this car for, I would say, about 2 months before I actually bought it. I'd go in, I'd play their games, I'd pretend to be more interested than I was, and all this and all that. And
a little sleight of hand, if you will.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to put it. And eventually, after
Don't
2
mess
months,
with the magician.
After a couple of weeks, they cracked, and I ended up getting what I originally wanted for it. So
Nice,
I was happy with that purchase.
Nice. Yeah, I'll say one thing. I always wanted a red car, and my second red car, I got 2 tickets in 2 weeks. I was like 20, and I'm like, no more red cars ever again.
Right.
Now being 50, I would probably get another one. But I'm a big fan of Mazdas. I think I've had about 4 Mazdas, Mazda RX-7, Mazda MX-6.
Oh, wow.
2 Miatas over the years. And
Okay.
yeah, Mazda's a great car.
Yeah, I've had at 100,000 miles. The only one thing I had were some of my seals on my engine were starting to go and needed new seals. But other than normal maintenance, I've had 0 issues with that car.
Nice. So you touched on it a little bit earlier, right? So we have your daily driver. Obviously, your wife has a daily driver.
She does. Yeah.
What's your dream car? It's obviously not a it's not a Chevy Camaro.
I think maybe the dream car was his Cavalier out of the gate.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's your next dream car? Pay attention.
Achieves his dream.
Okay.
Are you saying it couldn't be that?
Dream achieved. Chevy Cavalier. Can't go beyond that. But
the Cavalier,
I keep all my dreams very low and achievable. I don't dream big. I dream extra small.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
sorry.
I like to think of it as the Chevy Cavalier was a first car. The Hyundai Sonata was a needed car. My Mazda 6 is I guess another needed car. I mean, I was able to pick and choose that one, but I picked and chose it for the long haul. I'm usually not one to, get a new car every couple of years just to get a new car. I mean, I only got new cars, as my story goes, just because I needed to. Cavalier was on its way out, needed to get the Sonata. The Sonata got damaged, needed another car. So the dream car actually has always been, since I was about 10 years old, the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Yep, that has always been my dream car. And I remember the day I saw the movie. I was about 10 years old. My folks and I were living at my grandparents' house because my house that I grew up in most of my life was being built. And that's where my folks are now, still in Syracuse. I remember the movie coming on and watching that iconic scene from Back to the Future of that DeLorean coming out of the back of that van. And I just said, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. So that was one thing I said, oh, geez, I wish I could have one of these one day. Now, look, at 10 years old, you don't really think that. You don't even really know what any of that means, but over the years, it's just something I've always wanted.
Nice. So there's probably a long story about it, but how did your wife feel about it? What drove you to finally make that leap into the DeLorean, knowing that it wouldn't be your everyday car, right? And it's an expense. It's not super cheap. It's not Ferrari expensive, but somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it was at a point I had forgotten about the DeLorean for a long time, for several years. I mean, even throughout high school, something would pop up and it would make me think of it, but I never really thought I would buy it or get one or even want to get one, And so what had happened was I was home from college one day, and there was a gentleman outside of my neighborhood growing up where my parents live. And when he was washing a DeLorean. And it was the first DeLorean I had ever seen in real life. And this was on my way home from college. I think between my first and second years, I was coming home for the summer. And long story short, I took my buddy and we marched. I literally walked there because it was so close. And we walked to this guy washing his DeLorean. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a real DeLorean. This is not a joke. This is not a kit car. I mean, I could tell it was a real DeLorean. And I said, we just started talking to the guy. Oh, I've always wanted one of these. I can't believe it. So that kind of sparked my, I guess, more serious interest in the car, being 18, 19, 20 years old, however old I was.
Yeah.
And a real funny story about it. And, I was still young and dumb, even at 22 years old or whatever. I think I was like 22, 21, somewhere in there. I asked the guy, I says, geez, if you were ever to sell it, how much would you want for it? And he says, geez, I wouldn't take anything less than 35. So my stupid head thinks 3,500.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So I go home.
You obviously didn't major in math, Jim.
Yeah.
My goodness.
So,
you're an order of magnitude off, pal.
So my buddy and I are walking back to my dad's house, and I'm like, man, $3,500, that's really not that bad. I'm sure my dad would lend me that kind of money, So long story short, my dad basically made me realize he wanted 35 grand for the car. So I just was embarrassed. And then, but I was 20, I'm 40 now. So this was about 20 years ago. And anytime I had been home to visit for holidays or whatever, I still looked to see if that DeLorean was there. Mm-hmm. And for 20 years, I saw nothing. Well, wouldn't you know, last summer I was home. I actually trailered my DeLorean. I own a DeLorean now. I guess we could get into that. I kind of skipped ahead a little bit there. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I now own a DeLorean. We can get into that. But I brought my DeLorean up to Syracuse, New York for a huge annual car show. And while I was there, wouldn't you know, the time I am back in town with a DeLorean, I saw that guy outside with his DeLorean. After 20 years, he still has it. And I, of course, brought my DeLorean up to see his DeLorean and stuff like that. So it was just quite the experience. I'm sorry, I just kind of skipped ahead a little bit there. I just realized that.
No, that's okay. No, it's pretty cool. Going about 20 years over time, and
yeah. And I finally picked one up about 3 years ago. And getting back to you asking about my wife, my wife was 100% on board. She knew I had a passion for it. She knew I was in a position to buy it, and she's been on board the whole time. And she just loves that I have something that I love, and it's been great. And she's like, yeah, 100%, you should buy it.
Nice. Exactly.
All right. Well,
and Christian, if I may, so you mentioned your very supportive wife. What does your wife do?
My wife is in real estate. She's a realtor. Yep. Okay. She's been doing real estate for about 3 going on 4 years now.
Nice. And just in Northern Virginia or Alexandria?
Northern Virginia. I mean, technically Virginia State, because that's where she's licensed. But yeah, she just focuses on the Northern Virginia area.
Okay. Wonderful. So yeah, for you guys listening, Northern Virginia, we'll put in the show notes
that'd be
some
great.
details about Jim's wife. What's her name?
Her name is Daniela.
Daniela Gravina.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gravina,
yeah, be on the lookout.
Love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So
yeah,
we are coming up, and again, we're only it happens more and more often with these great guests that we have. We close in on the half an hour mark, and we're just getting into it. So
we're there already.
We're going to do something. I believe that we've even, with all my babbling, we've even gone past the 30-minute mark. So somebody should really hit the mute button on me every so often. So let's do a couple of things here. We're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to have a two-parter where we're going to have Jim back, because we really haven't even gotten to some of the interesting things that we spoke about in Jim's pre-production, which was the fact that he has an Emmy sitting on his bookcase, and we spied it, and we had a zillion questions, and we got into this fascinating discussion that we haven't even gotten into now. So we'd like to have him back. I would like to chat a little bit more about that. I would also like to go into a little more detail around the practical framework or decision framework that got him into the DeLorean first drive. When did he know?
Yeah.
What's it like owning one? Because it's a huge commitment. A supercar, any car is a commitment, but a supercar is a next level commitment.
And that itself is quite the story too. And I kind of wanted to stop to save that for later, because that's a story in and of itself. How I got it.
You got it.
And so if I may, Christian, just a quick aside. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back to talk more about your talk about the Emmy and how you got there and the DeLorean and everything that's happened since then.
Absolutely.
And for what it's worth, we have an episode with Kat DeLorean, born Catherine DeLorean, but this is John DeLorean's only daughter, and we were so privileged to have her on. So anybody who hasn't had a chance to listen, it's she's just a great lady. She's doing some really amazing things, but I won't give it all away, but it's in the last episode of season 1. So yeah. And we're all happy to talk about DeLoreans, right? And we actually spoke to a DeLorean.
I was going to say, I think
pretty rare.
You had Brian on once already. That's great.
Yep. Exactly.
Brian's one of our favorite episodes. We hear from a lot of the listenership on that. Kat DeLorean was very generous with her time. Wonderful guest. And so Jim, can we do this again in maybe a week or so?
Absolutely. You just named
got
the day
the
and
bad
time.
taste out of your mouth. Yeah, wonderful.
100%.
Lovely.
Excellent.
Well, hey, it was great meeting you, Jim, and thank you to my partner in crime, Doug, here for another really fun episode. The neat thing about this show that means a lot to me is all the interesting people that I get to meet. And it turned out to be a wonderful hobby. We got to thank Doug for being the prime mover, the invisible hand, the man with a plan. So what do you say, Doug? We'll have him back in a bit here. Any parting words before I pull into the parking lot, so to speak?
No. Just appreciate everybody's support, and loved having Jim on. Love the idea of the 2-part episode. So just really can't wait.
Absolutely,
wait to have Jim back.
Yeah, happy
absolutely.
To be back. Should be great.
Well, Magic Man, it was great to have you at the stick. No sleight of hand here. Everything we do is above board. Check us out, carslove.com, carslove.com. To all the cars I've loved before, check us out on your preferred podcast streaming platform of choice. And email us. Let us know what you think. You can either use the form on the site. There's feedback. We post quotes if you like what you write. Well, you don't have to use your last name. First name would be nice. And as always, reach out to us. I'm Christian at carslove.com. He is at Doug at carslove.com. Please join the conversation. This motor only runs because you are the gasoline. Check us out. Give us some feedback. Get involved. Be a guest. Thanks for being along with us, coming along with us on this journey. We'll see you next week. Talk to you soon. Thank y'all. Goodbye.